The Amazing Digital Circus's pilot episode was released now 4 months ago, and the fans are going crazy with the theories ever since. The 25-minute long episode honestly felt only like a snippet from the whole story of the show, and we're all curious about what's gonna happen next, but also what happened before the show, and if we were to get a prequel, what would we see? There has been speculation about why the characters got into the circus in the first place, and from the pilot episode, we do know that before they spawned in, they had to put on VR headsets when they were still in their human forms. And when we first see Pomni spawn in, she looks confused and immediately tries to escape through the exit door. But unlucky for her, it disappears right in front of her eyes and she's stuck. And she then tries to grab the VR headset off of her face, but only manages to pull her own face as a character. Jax then sarcastically says, "Just keep grabbing at it, that worked for all of us."
Just keep grabbing at it. That worked for all of us.
Referring to earlier times when they joined the circus, and based on his comment, we can assume that all of their initial reactions were the exact same as Pomni's. They ended up just getting used to the circus and the fact that they're probably going to be trapped in this universe forever, but they all do know that it's not the real world because they all tried to pull off VR headsets. The other characters then tell Pomni that they've been stuck in there for a long time, with Kinger being the very first one to be there out of the group, and the others think that's why he's went insane. And if you listen closely to Kinger, he often talks about insects or bugs, which is interesting because some people believe that Kinger in his human form was actually a developer of the Amazing Digital Circus VR game, and that also he was one of the first people to test the game, but thanks to some kind of bug, he was trapped in there forever. And this actually does make sense because looking at Kinger's design, we can see that he's a king chess piece, and that suggests that maybe his character is more important than we would initially think. And also, during the part in the pilot episode when Pomni, Jax, and Ragatha are going to go see Kaufmo to introduce Pomni to him, they're strolling down the dorm hall when we see the rooms of the other characters. But if you pay attention to the doors, you can see that on them we can see pictures of who they belong to. We can see Ragatha's, Jax, and even Pomni's new room, but we also see a door which belonged to a queen chess piece, but it's crossed out, and we know that it's a picture of Queenie, Kinger's wife, who's no longer present in the digital circus. Now we can't be for sure what happened to her. Maybe she abstracted just like Kaufmo and then got sent down to the cellar, but it could also be possible that before joining the circus, Kinger and Queenie were a couple in real life, and then they put on the VR headsets together, and after that, due to some kind of bug, Queenie disappeared after abstracting, and that sent Kinger crazy. However, it's not only Kinger who's sort of crazy. When Pomni, Jax, and Ragatha are on their way to Kaufmo's room, Pomni starts to ask questions about the adventure, and also why they can't leave, to which Ragatha goes into a nostalgic mood, thinking back to the time they first arrived, and admitted that she was also looking for a way out. However, after a while, she realized that there is no exit door, and when she sort of goes through an existential crisis about how life is pointless, and by fixating on leaving the circus, you'll just end up going crazy, she then explains that the adventures are good for distracting them, and this way they don't have time to stress about the fact that they know nothing about this place and if they could ever leave, which is pretty interesting. It sort of feels like without God, we as humans cannot really be sure of how we got here on Earth, and if we start to think about it really hard, it just sends us into an existential crisis because of the uncertainty. And we can also keep our minds busy with work and daily tasks just to feel like we're actually doing something meaningful, and that somehow on our own, our time spent here is important. But that makes me wonder, what could have happened in real life with our characters, aka what happened when they were still humans? Are they a part of some sort of experiment, or did the real world end, and is the Amazing Digital Circus sort of a digital afterlife that humans created through simulation, where they could leave their human bodies behind and transfer digital copies of their minds into the game? And of course, we know that there memories got wiped after they went into the circus, but their brains are still looking for answers. And we know that Cain, the ringleader of the circus, is the character who knows most about the place, as he's an AI and his eyes are everywhere. But this still makes me wonder, does Cain function as a sort of middleman between the characters in the outside world, or is he the brains behind the entire thing? He sure knows more than we were shown in the pilot episode, and if we consider the newest teaser that Glitch dropped for season 1, then we can make the connection that Cain is a mastermind who knows what's happening in the real world as well as in the circus, because he explained to Pomni that people love the pilot episode of the Amazing Digital Circus, and he also kinda showed us the impact that it had on us, the viewers, such as creating theories, fan art, ships, and the whole phenomenon of content farm channels. But this also could just be an inside joke to address the hype that the show got, and maybe this isn't canon in terms of what's happening in the show. But going back to the Kinger theory, Kinger might have actually been a key figure in the development of the game, and Cain must also be one of the creators, as he told the others that he's capable of creating new things such as the exit door, as well as new worlds for different adventures. And if you had paid attention to the details in the pilot episode, you must have noticed the C and A logo on the wall, and this was all when Pomni was looking for the exit. And there have been theories about the biblical implications on the show, and going down this rabbit hole, we can assume that the C and A logo would stand for Cain and Abel, who were the sons of Adam and Eve, and we know that Cain killed Abel out of jealousy. And I know this could be a very far stretch, but if Cain is Cain, then who would be Abel? Would it be Bubble, or maybe even Kinger? Well, we can't be for sure, but maybe we will eventually learn more about the backstory of the characters in the new episodes. Maybe Cain is on the outside in the real world, and the AI version of him is what takes care of the digital circus, and he murdered Kinger by sending his mind to be stuck in the digital prison. However, this isn't everything. If you remember back at the end of the pilot episode, after Cain brought back Pomni from the void, all the characters gathered around Cain and watched how he sent Kaufmo down to the cellar after he found out that he abstracted. And just a side note, this is also weird. If you think about how Cain knows about everything in the digital circus except for the fact that a giant abstracted monster is running around, could he actually be trying to abstract the other characters as well? We know he has all-seeing eyes. Of course he would see Kaufmo abstracted, but he acts like he didn't. But after he sent Kaufmo down to the cellar, the characters were having a huge feast at a very long table where they had to sit on one side of the table. And I'm pretty sure this is reminding you of something, and it looks exactly like the Last Supper, where the characters are sitting next to each other with Pomni in the middle, just where Jesus sat. But here's where it gets even crazier. If you look at the teaser that we got from before the pilot episode came out, we see Cain showing us around the circus, showing different pictures of locations, and he then introduces us to Pomni. He then puts her on a wheel and starts throwing knives at her, but thankfully the shot cuts, and then we can only see the aftermath where Pomni has all these knives sticking out from her body. Now this could also resemble, if you look at the way that Pomni was put on the wheel, it looks almost the exact same as the crucifixion of Jesus. And one more thing that adds to the theory is the picture that it was posted by Gooseworks on Twitter, where we can see Pomni on a cross literally being crucified. And so it might be possible that Pomni will sacrifice herself just as Jesus did for us, and since she's the main character, she would then end up dying, which would send us viewers into a literal depression, as Gooseworks confirmed that episode 2 is going to be about depression. Now I don't know about you guys, but if this is all true down to the very last detail, I'm gonna be mad, as I'm not ready to let Pomni go and die for the others in only episode 2, so I'm hoping at least maybe it'll happen in episode 8 as a season finale. But let me know what you guys think will happen in episode 2, or what the prequel to the show really is. Thanks for watching, subscribe, and click on this video here.